Spoiler warning. The following discussion will contain spoilers. We recommend checking out the movie first, then coming back to hang with us. But if you don't care about that, glad to have you here.
I am Jason.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Real Review. My name is Kevin.
And I'm John.
And we are The Real Movie Guys. Welcome to Real Terror Month, a series where we discuss movies that will send chills down your spine. On today's episode, we'll be taking a look at Friday the 13th. A group of camp counselors are stalked and murdered by an unknown assailant while trying to reopen a summer camp, which was the site of a child's drowning and a grisly double murder years before. So, John, what is your experience with slasher movies?
Before we totally get into that too,
Yeah.
the horror genre has always been like a miss for me.
Oh boy.
For certain movies, like I don't understand like what the huge appeal on some of them are either.
Okay.
Because like when I'm watching these
Right.
movies and seeing certain like kills and other things and just like putting the movie together, I put it together as like a whole movie instead of like take it into like the horror movie sense.
Okay.
Like for some horror movies, you like I'll see some things on like say investigation shows or other kind of shows like that,
Right.
and like those kills seem so like they're real and stuff and legit, and then some of these kills in like other horror movies are so like almost like wow, I knew that was gonna happen in a way.
Right.
So I would say that I'm not as huge into horror as
So not huge in the
those
horror.
huge
So
horror fans.
So I'm gonna assume your slasher movie experience is pretty pitiful, at best.
Yeah, probably.
Probably. Have you seen Friday the 13th before?
I've seen one of them before.
Not
I don't
this
think
one.
I've seen this one.
So you've never sat down and watched it from beginning to end.
No,
Okay.
not even close.
Okay, that's okay. You'd be surprised. That's not uncommon, to be honest. I mean, a lot of people, usually you just catch it when it's on like sci-fi. You'll just catch like a quick viewing of it. They always have like a marathon, like even when it's not Halloween or whatever the case is. There's always some kind of marathon on for Friday the 13th, especially when it is Friday the 13th. Actually, they usually air it. A lot of people don't start from the beginning, so I thought, especially because this is a local New Jersey series, it is filmed in New Jersey where we are currently located. I thought this would be a fun start. It's a good introductory slasher series for people. I think you'll get a lot out of it as far as, seeing if you like slashers, or maybe this will help you understand why slashers are so popular. So, Friday the 13th. What are your first impressions?
Interesting.
Interesting. So, I'm going to hit you with a fun fact. And again, you were told before you watch this video there's spoilers, so I don't want to hear it in the comments. I spoiled the movie. Jason's not in this movie.
No, and that was the one.
So did that surprise you?
It surprised me, and then it made me also kind of angry in a way, though.
It made you angry?
Yeah, because I was like, all right, this is a Friday the 13th movie, so you expect,
Sure.
all of a sudden, you expect Jason.
Hmm.
And then this was like about Jason's mom, so I feel like
Oh, yeah.
calling it like Jason's movie or calling it a Friday the 13th movie with just him being like the huge star in Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Without him being there, it was kind of like,
Right.
all right, like another, it's kind of seemed like, okay, this was another horror, like another random horror movie.
Well, I always find that that's fun trivia to throw at somebody, especially if you want to throw it at your friends. True or false, is Jason in the first Friday the 13th? Most people would say true, but he's not. I mean, I guess technically he's in at the end.
He's in at the end.
Technically,
Yeah.
but that's a whole nother conversation. But he's not. He's not the killer in Friday the 13th. Another fun fact, which we'll get into later in the series, Jason only kills... Jason's famous for killing camp counselors. That's like his whole thing. Like he always kills camp counselors. That's what he's known for as far as like a pop culture horror icon. Realistically though, he's only killed camp counselors in like 2 movies. Out of all of them, he
Interesting.
hasn't really killed camp counselors that often, but for whatever reason, that's what he's most known for. So I always think that's funny. That and the whole, he's known for his hockey mask, which we didn't even get into that yet. We still got a little bit to go before we even get to the Jason we all know and love. But humble origins for sure. This movie is without a doubt should be placed in the Horror Hall of Fame, right? At first glance, it doesn't seem that interesting, I would argue. This movie came out right after Halloween, so if you're familiar with Halloween, this is almost an identical copy of Halloween in a lot of ways. The same kind of camera shots, same kind of plotting, but there is things that make it different. Now, what is a positive that you would have, at least about this, John? Hence, Jason's not in this movie, but was there anything you liked about this movie initially?
There one big thing that I like about this movie is how they
Okay.
explained like a almost like a backstory of Jason
Right,
and
right.
why he kind of does what he does,
Mm-hmm.
and like you can kind of see it almost through his point of view of like why he does this. And I
Okay.
thought that was like an interesting way
So
to tell
let's
a story about him
so let's take that out.
without him being definitely in
Let's
it.
take Jason out of the movie.
Hmm.
All right, let's take him out. What do you think of the movie without knowing anything that comes after it? What would your opinion be? So let's just say hypothetically, this was the only Friday the 13th movie that was ever made. So there's no Jason, there's nothing after
Well,
this.
well,
So
honestly,
this
I
is the
feel like
movie.
I've only seen one Jason movie
Right.
before this.
Right. So let's just say
So
now.
like,
So let's say just based on it now.
th-
It's hard. This is a hard thing to do. So you're gonna review this movie with a sense of nothing came after it.
oh, you're putting me on the spot.
I'm putting you on the
See,
spot.
there was
So
one thing that I said that like people are gonna hate,
yeah,
but I said if I watched this movie
right.
and someone told me after this movie
Hmm.
that there was gonna be like 12 more movies,
Right.
I would have told them they're flat out lying
Okay.
because after this movie,
It felt
I didn't
final,
hate,
right?
I
Did it
didn't
feel
hate the
final?
movie. It felt like it could have been over. It could have been
Hmm.
like almost like other movies that you see. Like once you're
Well, it
done,
had
it's
it
over.
had a finality to it, right? It
Yeah, it was
felt
over.
over. So let's go into this movie. I really want to jump. I want to dive right in. No pun intended. Poor Jason. Uh, I want to jump into this movie. So the first thing I love right off the bat, Betsy Palmer kills it as Mrs. Voorhees. You can say whatever you want about this movie. There is a lot of negatives with this movie, but she is chilling. She's creepy. The way she talks to herself when she talks to herself as Jason.
Don't let her get away, Mommy. Don't let her live. I won't, Jason. I won't.
Betsy Palmer is freaky as hell. I don't care what you say. That woman, she flips the switch like that on and off.
Did you know that a young boy drowned the year before those two others were killed? The counselors weren't paying any attention. They were making love while that young boy drowned. His name was Jason.
And you just know something's not right in her head. So with a slasher movie or I'd say any kind of, yeah, I would say any slasher movie in general, the main thing you want is your villain. Your villain is key. So for a lot of this movie, we have no idea who the villain is. We just know someone's killing people, right? That's all we know. We never get a clear look at them. We have no idea until the very end. You meet Betsy Palmer playing Mrs. Voorhees, and you find out her backstory and just the way she comes through with her conviction.
Jason was my son, and today is his birthday.
Where's Mr. Christie?
Oh, I couldn't let them open this place again. Could I? Not after what happened.
And just, again, that young Jason voice creeps me the hell out.
Kill her, Mommy. Kill her. She can't hide. No place to hide. Get her, Mommy. Get her. Kill her.
Just the way she comes through sells it for me, at least as far as that. I get why she's doing what she's doing. It took a little bit to get there. There's arguments to be made, but again, just her overall character, she's iconic.
Yeah, I tend to agree.
Yeah. What else does this movie do? So now, did you notice anything as far as filming technique? Was there anything that you noticed specifically?
Only that it seemed like it was not a great filmed movie, I would say.
Okay.
Like it almost seemed like an amateur doing it, almost in a
Well,
way.
well, this is very low budget. This movie had about zero budget, and it kind of shows for a lot of lot of the time. Getting into that, there's things that are in this movie that are going to be in every horror movie, right? Every slasher movie has these tropes. So, what I like to see is in a horror movie, especially a slasher, is whether or not they can incorporate these tropes and overcome them. Now, for the purpose of this review, we have a hard time with that because Friday the 13th is one of the originators of those tropes. So the things we're seeing in this movie have been done 1,000 times. Granted, they've been done maybe 100 times at this point, but they haven't reached thousands of times like they do currently. So the things I like, I really do love the first person camera that they use throughout this movie. It's always unsettling. There's always like a lingering shot, whether it's like the camper's just doing something or someone's just off in the bushes watching you. I think they did a really good job with that. Now, did you like that perspective, John? Were you a fan of that, or?
It started to grow on me more, and like
Mm-hmm.
almost throwing that in with like just the music and the score in the background too,
Okay.
or the score really.
Well, I'm
I also thought
happy you bring that up. Before we go, I just want to touch on this. So, the famous noise.
Yes? Come on, you guys.
As you've heard. Now, what do you think they're saying in the famous noise? There's
I don't
actually
know.
2 words that are being said.
Really?
Yeah. Any idea? If it's okay if you don't, it's okay.
No.
It's going kill, 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 ma, ma, ma.
Oh, I think I've actually heard like
yeah, it's
somebody say that, or
that's what it is. How creepy is that? That just adds a whole other layer to that. That noise is just again. Icon use that word a lot, and I hate to use it, but it's iconic. It's iconic horror right there. The fact you bring up the soundtrack, an interesting point. There really is no soundtrack. The only time there's a soundtrack is when the killer's there. If there's no killer, there's no soundtrack. A lot of the scenes have nothing. When the kids are just hanging out, talking, there's zero soundtrack. The only time you ever hear any kind of accompaniment score is when the killer's nearby or about to kill somebody.
Must be my imagination.
Otherwise, there's no score in this movie besides that sound effect.
well, see, and that was the one thing that like I kept getting going back and forth whether I enjoyed it or I didn't enjoy like
Okay.
the lack of sound and stuff,
Right.
and just like certain like times that they would put certain things in. I was like, oh, okay.
Okay, so
I
you're
guess
still
it's
torn on
good.
that, right? You're not really sure how you feel.
I couldn't walk away from it going, oh, I really like that, or I didn't.
I personally love it. I think it's different, especially we don't really see that nowadays. I feel like a lot of movies are just overblown with a score. Leave it to horror, leave it to trash horror cinema to put in, about zero soundtrack and just rely on a sound effect your whole movie. I think it works, especially when it's foreboding and adds tension, especially when the music just slowly starts to quell. It starts to build up when the villain or the killer's there.
Bill! Bill!
I think it works entirely, especially in the slasher genre. It's something that is extremely powerful. Another thing this movie does, and it's not because we live in New Jersey, but I really do love the locale in this movie. I thought the camp, it felt very organic and real, especially like the small town setting. I don't know if it had to do because it was such a small budget, they actually had to rely on like a real setting and location. But I felt like I got to know like the area of Crystal Lake. You know what I mean? Like I felt like I could see where the cabins were. You knew where the relation was to the lake, everything like that. It's just a small town on the outskirts there. I thought the setting worked really well, especially what better place to have a killer trouncing around than at a camp surrounded by forests. I think it's the perfect setting for a slasher.
Yeah, I agree.
There's one other actor in this movie that we didn't talk about. Now, do you know who it was? What famous actor's in this movie?
No, kind of
don't?
scared.
You're scared? You don't know who it was? I'll give you. He was one of the can counts. It was a man. and he was one of the camp counselors.
I don't know.
Kevin Bacon.
Hey, this is no dream.
Yeah, he was terrible.
What he was terrible. It was a young kid. Give him a break.
Yeah.
But Kevin Bacon's in this movie, and whenever they interview him, he's always like overjoyed about talking about this movie. It's kind of like a Johnny Depp situation, like Johnny Depp's in the first Nightmare on Elm Street. It's one of those like big actors where it's like, oh, look where they got their start, in these like crappy horror movies. But I thought that was fun. Kevin Bacon has an interesting death scene as well. I do like.
That was I guess my problem with this movie.
Mm-hmm.
For most of it, I felt like the actors and actresses in this movie
Right.
weren't that great.
You neglected to mention that downtown they call this place Camp Blood.
Like, they didn't sell their role. They kind of almost played it almost like they picked some people off the streets and they were like, hey, we need some fake camp counselors.
You wouldn't be wrong if I told you.
Oh.
The director of this movie, he said in many interviews when they were talking about this series where, who am I going to cast for all these actors, for these kids to be these camp counselors? He said, I just want people that look good and look like they would be in a Pepsi commercial. And that's what you got, right? So they're not good actors. None of them.
Hey, what's he talking about?
Hey, don't get smart.
Me? I'm as dumb as they come.
Hey, another word out of you. You understand me?
Officer. Really, nothing's going on here. We're just trying to get the place in shape.
In shape for what?
Officer, is there anything we can do to help?
We'd be glad to help out.
I mean, the only actor that's actually good is Betsy Palmer, but she's actually like a seasoned actor, and she I believe there's something along the line. She cried when she read the script that she was going to be in this movie because she needed a paycheck. But regardless of that, no one can act in this movie. But keep in mind, now you'll learn this as we go on, so keep that in the back of your brain. You don't go for the performance. Any of these actors, you're not going for a performance. That's not what the highlight is for these movies.
Well, and see, I think that's where my problems always has been with watching certain horror movies, because for most movies you take acting, you take story, all that into consideration before making a full total judgment on a movie.
Sure, for a normal movie, absolutely.
And for these, it's all right, throw away the acting skills, throw away it making any sense or anything like that. Just throw away all this stuff and just go based on it's just one of those movies that are just one of those so-called slashers.
I thought everyone at home thought I was a cinema snob. God, this guy over here. So there's two things that matter in a horror movie: how good your blood and your effects, and how good the kills are. So first off, right off the bat, I love practical. This movie does everything practical. Now, you can argue a lot of the kills aren't really over the top in this movie. There's nothing really, not what the series is known for later on. Some pretty ridiculous things. These are mostly just chops, cut to the head or a slit throat. It seems to be the common one in this movie. You don't really get anything too over the top. Again, the practical effects worked for me. I mean, you can tell this movie didn't age well in any sense of the word as far as its effects. You can see literally the plastic neck at times when a throat gets slit and there's stuff pouring out of it. That's okay to me, though. I'd rather it be that than overabundance of CGI that we have today. There's a certain charm to it. I don't know if you agree with that, but I feel like there's a little bit of a charm.
My only thing is it seems like a lot of slasher movies too have when somebody gets their neck slit open, they're the blood starts spitting out and stuff.
Yeah.
And that always made it look even faker than it was.
Yeah, but it's supposed to be. It's over the top. You're going to learn. We're going to teach you. As the series goes on, I think you're going to learn. Like you said, though, and again, I'm trying to tell you to look at this movie as if the sequels don't exist. The most important thing this movie does is it sets up the future, right? It sets up what happens, what Jason's eventually going to be about once he circles back around, which is an interesting story in its own right. But it sets up the whole precedent, right? It sets up his backstory.
Did Christie tell you about the two kids murdered in 58? Huh? Boy drowning in 57? A bunch of fires? Nobody knows who did any of them.
It's just the kickoff to the series. I think that's the most important thing. And I think that's why, again, maybe it doesn't do anything super inventive, but at the same time, it's the kickoff point for what the future of Friday the 13th would be, the very ups and extreme lows of the series that are to come. That being said, I want to get into some negatives. So, like I said, the big thing I think for me is a lot of it's too routine in this movie. Not even just saying based on modern horror, but just on horror of the time. It didn't really do anything new. Seen any kind of like the 70s, 80s horror movies, that this was right along with it. I brought up Halloween. Even the director, Sean Cunningham, he just says flat out, I just saw Halloween and I wanted to make my own version of Halloween that was a roller coaster. And, I'd argue the roller coaster comment, but it is essentially Halloween. It's a poor man's Halloween. That's exactly what this is.
I think he meant this was going to be a flat ride.
Yeah, I mean...
Not so much a roller coaster.
Yeah, and the bad part, too, is it lacks a lot of style. I think you're going to see that evolve as the series goes on, but if we're just talking about this movie in general, besides, Mrs. Voorhees being the killer, which I do really love, I think Betsy Palmer, again, just knocks it out of the park. Besides that, there's really nothing new, At times, I would even argue this movie's kind of boring, especially early on.
Is it dead?
Either that or it's got a very short clone.
Well, at least we know what's for dinner.
Literally the last 20 minutes is where all your action happens. You had some kills sprinkled throughout, but because they weren't so sensationalized or exciting, when you get to that final confrontation when Betsy Palmer reveals herself as, Mrs. Voorhees, again, you never met her before, which is a whole nother issue. There's arguably not much there until you get to that climax at that point.
Well, see, I can see what you're saying. I hope that a lot of these horror movies, I feel like they should have like a timing for horror movies to be like an hour to an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Which I think is like a strong point for these movies.
I agree.
Because otherwise, you're just trying to almost keep trying to.
You're welcome. That's flat out what it comes down to. This movie likes to meander, and I don't know why. I don't know why they did that. I feel like they just had an excess of footage and didn't know what to cut. So I don't know if it's because he was a newer director at the time. I don't know what the case was. But a lot of the times there's just dead air. There's things that happen. There's the crazy towns guy that just randomly shows up and says they're gonna kill you. He's like in the pantry.
Messenger of God, you're doomed if you stay here. This place is cursed. Cursed.
And then he runs away and he's never seen again. Like, what was the point of that?
You're doomed. You're all doomed.
Right, there was no point to that scene, and then like the girl hitchhiking to get all the way to the camp.
I think we better stop. Please?
Before she even makes it in, it's like, oh, I guess, then to finally just be killed in a way, because that was that subverted my expectations. I thought she was going to be the main girl, right? I would think, especially because you're focusing all this time, and then you just kill her right away. But again, in hindsight, it meanders a lot early on. Again, the last 20 minutes is really where your action is with this whole movie.
Well, I even thought like the girl that they made the main girl too, she wasn't believable either. Like there were some parts where like she's fighting Jason's mom, Mrs. Voorhees.
Thank you.
And she's fighting her, and at times she can outstrength her, and then other times she's like, "Hold on, I just want to leave now," or "I'm scared now." Like she kept going from a point of like, "I'm really petrified," to
That's another symptom of the horror movie, let's say. Logic is a big symptom that these movies will suffer from. All of them suffer from. There's times where she like hit her. She hits her with like a fire poker. Right?
Yeah.
She hits her once with a fire poker and just walks away. I'm like, kill that girl. Kill her.
Well, that was the other
right there. Just kill her. She's going to come after you.
That was the other problem I had, too. Was each time Mrs. Voorhees would catch her, and then they'd fight for a while, and then she'd knock her down or get her hurt,
right?
And she just walks away to let her do it again, like you didn't know that she was going to come back. Like if you just finish her off with something like
but then you wouldn't have the climax that we had either. So again, it's logic. You could take that as a positive or a negative. I tend to lean more towards the negative with some of the logic decisions, but unfortunately it's just a symptom of horror movies, especially slasher. The last thing I want to talk about before we jump into a couple spicy things we got here, the jump scare. What did you think of that at the end? So at this point, you have Adrienne King.
She's in the raft.
Who plays Alice. She's in the raft. You know, you think the story's over. She's got her hand in the water. She's all calm. She's, playing with the water. And out of nowhere... Friggin' Jason jumps out of the water, grabs her, and drags her down. Now, did you see that coming? Or
yeah, I saw that
surprise
coming.
You?
No, I saw that one coming. I knew something was gonna happen. As soon as she put her hand in the water,
right?
I knew like, okay, Jason's coming now. Like
now, see, I knew that was coming. It still made me jump.
Really?
I can't lie about it. It makes you every time. It just catches me. It's just so serene and calm, and then you just have this just like he just like jumps out and drags her. So iconic. Even afterward, it's kind of silly afterwards. You're like, oh, he's still out there.
Ma'am, we didn't find any boy.
Then he's still there.
And it's like, okay, well, whatever. They don't believe her. They don't know. They don't think it happened. Again, that's a little silly. But again, I like it. But what I want to get into is a special little segment of this video I like to call The Real Kill. Due to the nature of the season, myself and John will now select a recipient of the Real Kill Award, a special award given to the kill we think is the highlight of the film. So, John.
Yes.
Who would you like to present the Real Kill Award to for this movie?
I would present it to the girl that chops Mrs. Voorhees' head off at the end.
All right. I'm glad you picked that. That was up there for me.
Because I felt like out of all like the kills in the movie, and out of everything that could have been realistic in a way, I felt like her chopping her head off, then it just ending kind of like almost in a way like that.
So let me set the scene for this scene. So John's officially when Alice chops off Mrs. Voorhees' head. This is the scene he's referring to. So they're struggling, they're fighting. Alice finds a machete on the ground. She picks up the machete and she just swings for the fences and cleaves Mrs. Voorhees' head clean off her head. But it's not just a simple like cleave. It's like blood shooting out. But I think my favorite like part of this scene is you see Mrs. Voorhees like put her hands up in the air and she's like clenching her fists in anger that her head just got chopped off. And I'm just like, that is the most dramatic thing I have ever seen in a movie. Like, you have no head. How the hell are you making these like hand gestures and flinging your arms around? I literally I laughed out loud.
So that's the one I would give.
All right, very, very good. I like your choice. I would like to present my Real Kill Award to Kevin Bacon. Kevin Bacon plays Jack. He just hooked up with this girl. You know, he's laying there, he's having a cigarette, he's hanging out. Suddenly, a pair of hands comes up from under the bed and grabs him, and a knife just goes right through his throat. I think that's pretty inventive for the time. You didn't see many, out of all the kills in this movie, that was probably the most unique. Behind the scenes of this is really interesting, too, where they had a fake prosthetic, like, upper torso that Kevin Bacon, his head was on the top of the fake neck, and then they just stuck a knife through it and had the blood shoot out. I thought that was just a crazy, awesome scene. It's wicked, it's gross, it's what I like to see in my slasher movies for sure.
Yeah, I remember that part. It was really good.
We're at that point where we're about to give our final scores. I'm going to give Friday the 13th a B-.
Come, dear. It will be easier for you than it was for Jason.
Killer, Mommy. Killer.
The reason I give this movie a B- is a lot of it, I'll argue, has to do with its place in cinematic history. It's the kickoff to a franchise, so at least in my opinion, it gets a lot of points just because of that. It sets off a trend that's going to carry on for so many films to go forward. But it does have a lot of good things about it. You know, I think Betsy Palmer is she's the ultimate killer in my opinion. You know, I think she's creepy. I think she's got the whole atmosphere to her. I think, like I said, the scenery I thought was really good. The use of practical effects are still pretty decent. It has that perfect B-movie cheese. I didn't think it was as bad as, you know, it could as it could be for how old this movie is. John, where do you stand with this movie?
I gave this movie a C+.
Well, there's no crazy people around here, right?
I told you to sit on it, Tonto.
All around, it was a good movie for like a slasher / horror movie and stuff like in that realm. I feel like it's a really good movie, but I felt like giving it a B was just too much for me to give it.
Okay.
So I stand firm as C+.
I can definitely appreciate your perspective on that for sure, and I hope we get to see more of your input as we continue on with this slasher series and all the other movies we're going to cover during the Real Terror Month series. So, where can the people find us at home?
You can find us on YouTube, at TheReelMovieGuys on YouTube. You can find us on Twitter, TheReelMovieGuy. We would like you to like our channel, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can see when we go live, when we go put our videos up. You can also find us on many podcasting platforms, such as...
Yes, for your listening pleasure, we are also available in podcast form at iTunes, Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcast, Overcast, Breaker, Radio Public, and Pocket Casts. Be sure to give us a listen at any of those fine places. If you already are right now, hey, greatly appreciate it. Just search Real Movie Guys. We should pop right up. Again, I'd like to thank you all for joining us for this episode of The Real Review. My name's Kevin. This guy over here, he's John. We are The Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. And don't worry, there's still a lot of scares involved for Real Terror Month. Catch you next time.
See ya!